After spending 4 long years in prison for assaulting my boss over an affair, I find myself standing alone, watching my children avoid me. The weight of my decisions crashes down on me, and regret floods my mind. This was supposed to be my fresh start, a chance to rebuild, to reclaim the life I once had, to patch up the pieces of a shattered existence. Yet, here I am, facing the painful reality that everything I lost is irretrievable. This wasn't the second chance I imagined. It all began with a mistake, a single misstep that I thought would be forgotten, a moment of weakness I convinced myself wouldn't matter. At the time, it felt insignificant, a fleeting lapse in judgment. But now, looking back, I realize it was the catalyst for the unraveling of my entire life. I had everything anyone could want, a beautiful wife, Sarah, and 2 incredible kids, Ellie and Max. Our home, nestled in a quiet neighborhood, appeared perfect to the outside world. But deep inside, something was missing, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was. I didn't know it at the time, but I was searching for something more: validation, excitement, a spark that seemed absent from my routine life. Sarah was the perfect wife, loving and caring, but as the years went by, we grew apart. The spark we once had dulled, and our days began to feel monotonous, predictable. I convinced myself that I needed something to reignite the fire. That's when I met Emily. Emily was my boss, and she was everything Sarah wasn't. Where Sarah was steady and dependable, Emily was spontaneous, exciting, and full of energy. She gave me the attention I hadn't realized I was craving, and in her presence, I felt alive, important, and desired. The emptiness that had been gnawing at me for so long was suddenly filled in a way I didn't expect. What started as harmless flirting soon turned into something more. I told myself it was just a phase, a small escape from the dull routine of my life. I convinced myself it didn't matter, that it wouldn't affect my family. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. The guilt slowly started to seep in, creeping up on me, but I couldn't stop. I thought I could manage it, be the perfect husband and father at home while keeping this affair on the side. But the lies began to pile up, and I couldn't compartmentalize them forever. The affair reached its breaking point one Friday afternoon. I had finally convinced myself that it was time to come clean to Sarah. I was going to tell her everything, end the affair, and try to rebuild our marriage. But Emily had other plans. She insisted we meet at the office one last time, and despite knowing I should end things, I went. I should have known better. I should have walked away then, but I didn't. It was in that office when everything spiraled out of control. Sarah, showing up unannounced, caught us in the act. I was too late to stop her from walking in, and before I could think, there she was, standing there with tears in her eyes. In that heated moment of confrontation, something inside me snapped. I was consumed by a mix of guilt, anger, and frustration. I wasn't thinking clearly. I didn't mean to, but I lashed out. My boss, who had been an innocent bystander, tried to intervene, but I pushed him away. It wasn't just a shove, it was an assault. In the chaos, I struck him in front of both Sarah and Emily. The moment my hand connected, everything froze. The guilt hit me like a wave. I saw the horror on Sarah's face, the disbelief in her eyes. Emily's voice trembled as she tried to defend me, but it was too late. Sarah didn't say another word. She turned and walked out, taking the kids with her. And that was it, the beginning of the end. My life unraveled from that moment. The consequences were swift. My boss pressed charges, and within days, I was arrested. I never imagined it would come to this, that a single moment of rage could destroy everything I had worked for. The weeks that followed were a blur, endless legal battles, apologies that fell on deaf ears, and the overwhelming reality of losing everything that mattered. I lost my family, my job, and any shred of self-respect, all because of a moment of poor judgment and an uncontrollable outburst. The next 4 years in prison were nothing short of a nightmare. The walls around me felt suffocating, but the prison I found myself truly trapped in was of my own making, one I had built with my choices. I had once been a man with everything: But now I was a prisoner, both to the physical bars that held me and to the weight of the decisions I had made. I had lost my family, my future, and the person I once was, all because of an affair and a single, impulsive act of violence. And as I sit here now, looking at the pieces of my broken life, I realize just how far I've fallen. The days in prison felt endless, filled with a constant loop of self-reflection. I replayed every mistake over and over in my mind, each one a cruel reminder of the life I had destroyed. Surrounded by others who had committed far worse crimes, I couldn't shake the sense that my own actions had caused the greatest damage. The prison walls closed in on me, but it wasn't just the physical confinement that tormented me. It was the heavy burden of my choices. Regret became my constant companion. There were no visitors, no letters from my kids, no calls from Sarah. It was as if I had disappeared from their lives entirely. Time passed, slow and agonizing, and though there were brief moments of clarity, when I thought that maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to redeem myself, those moments were fleeting. The loneliness always crept back in, filling the spaces where hope had briefly resided. I had lost everything, and even though the bars around me were physical, it felt like I was still trapped in a cage I had built for myself. The walls of that cage were invisible but far more suffocating. Then, the day arrived when I was finally released. I had served my sentence, and now I was free to go. In my naive optimism, I thought I could rebuild my shattered world, that perhaps I could earn my children's forgiveness, that seeing them again would restore some sense of purpose. I believed that time would heal the wounds, that I could leave the past behind and start anew. But when I finally laid eyes on them, everything came crashing down. Noah, now 12, looked at me with cold, resentful eyes. The boy I once knew, the one who used to run to me with open arms, was gone. In his place was a stranger, a young man shaped by 4 years of my absence. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The years I had missed out on, the birthdays, the milestones, the quiet moments of watching him grow, those were lost to me forever. Lily, only 10, was no different. She wouldn't look at me. She wouldn't speak. She had closed herself off completely, a barrier between us that seemed insurmountable. The silence between us was deafening, and I didn't know how to break it. I tried desperately. I called their names, begged them to talk to me, to tell me how I could make things right. But all I received were cold stares and awkward silences. It was as if the connection we once shared had evaporated, and in its place was an impenetrable wall. Then, finally, Noah spoke. His voice was distant, bitter. "Why did you leave us?" His words sliced through me like a knife, and I could only stand there, paralyzed by the weight of the question. My voice cracked as I answered. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." But Noah wasn't finished. His next words, so simple and direct, felt like they were laced with poison. "Then why did you hurt Mom? Why did you leave us for 4 years?" I had no answer. What could I possibly say? How could I explain the mess I had made, the terrible decisions that had led to this point? How could I make them understand? How could I tell them that I loved them with every ounce of my being, that despite my mistakes, they were everything to me? But the words caught in my throat. I didn't have the answers. And so, here I stood, a man with nothing, no family, no home, no way to make it right. My life, once filled with love and possibility, had been reduced to a broken pile of regret. The prison walls that had once confined me were nothing compared to the emotional walls I now faced with my children. The damage had been done, and no amount of time could undo it. The days that followed were a blur of failed attempts at reconciliation, each one more crushing than the last. Every day, I tried to reach out to my kids, to find a way back into their lives, but the silence was deafening. Sarah had moved on. She had remarried, built a life without me, and every attempt to reach out to her seemed to be met with resistance. She was angry, not just at me, but at everything that had unfolded, everything that had fallen apart. I began to question everything. Was there even any point in trying to rebuild my relationship with the kids? Was it too late for me? I watched them from a distance, seeing them live their lives without me, and it tore me apart. Every milestone, every conversation, every laugh I missed out on felt like another nail in the coffin of my failure. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Noah. It was short, just a few words. But those words hit me harder than anything I had ever experienced. I miss you, Dad, but I don't know if I can forgive you. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. A small victory, a glimmer of light in the darkness. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance. Maybe I could prove to them that I was worthy of their forgiveness. It wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. But for the first time, I was willing to try. The road to redemption would be long, hard, and full of setbacks, but it was the only road I had left. And so, I took my first step down that path, determined to make things right, no matter how long it took. The journey would be painful, but I had to try. I had lost everything once, but if there was a chance to rebuild even a fraction of what I had to take it. For them, for me, for all of us.